Monday, 6 April 2009, 6 o'clock. Evening is setting in. All seems quiet at Camp Holland in Uruzgan, Afghanistan. Then, suddenly, a rocket hits our barracks. A tremendous explosion. Smoke and dust. Debris falling back to the ground. And the crying of wounded people. Wounded soldiers. Our soldiers. One of them died that day, and a number of other brave men and women were severely injured. Sergeant Peer Bacchus was their leader. He was and felt responsible for them. During and after that terrible moment for the province of Uruzgan, nothing really changed. But for Peer and his unit of 30 young men and women, everything had changed. Peer realized that the only way to keep his unit and his people functional was to keep on showing the leadership style they were used of him. To lead by example, to efface himself, serving the platoon and the mission. And a few days later, the platoon was operational again, going on patrol again. And every year since that horrible day, Peer invites his old platoon to meet on 6 April, remembering those terrible events and to commemorate their friend. And they all come every year. Now, how did Sergeant Bacchus manage to do that? Ladies and gentlemen, after receiving the invitation to speak at this conference, I wondered about agility. Are armed forces agile organizations? Are our leaders capable of leading in an agile manner? And is agility a new concept to the military? Maybe not very new. In 1941, the United States Army consisted of merely 200,000 soldiers. The military were used only to provide internal security, and the USA's foreign strategy was one of neutrality. Until December 7th. That day, the Japanese Imperial Navy attacked Pearl Harbor and destroyed almost 20% of the US fleet and 90% of the aircraft stationed in Hawaii. More than 2,400 soldiers died that day, and the US had no choice but to abandon their strategy. They were drawn into war by Japan, and days later, they were at war with Germany as well. Only 2.5 years later, in June 1944, the American forces consisted of 8 million well-equipped soldiers, an increase of 4,000%, which I think we can call exponential, long before the term became fashionable as it is now. An expeditionary strategy instead of an internal, neutral one. And the capacity not only in manpower, but also in logistics and supplies to keep up that fight for more than 4 years. Now that I call an agile organization. And this example teaches us two things. Not only does it show that armed forces, through the ever-changing environment they need to operate in, are agile by definition, it also shows that agility as a quality is not new to organizations. And, not unknown to the Netherlands Armed Forces as well, the example of Sergeant Bacchus shows agility at working level within our organization. But it is not only our leaders in the field who must be able to show agility. Uruzgan province, Afghanistan, 2006. One of the most dangerous areas in Afghanistan. Dutch troops were to deploy there and create a safe and secure environment in that harsh place. The overall threat was immense, but a significant threat was expected from improvised explosive devices, so-called roadside bombs or IEDs. General Peter van Uhm, Chief of Defense at the time, had to act in order to reduce risk to the deployed forces. He took two unusual steps. First, he enforced a quick procurement process for new necessary equipment. A process that would normally take up years was now conducted in months. Efficient? Probably not, but very effective indeed. And in our line of work, efficiency is not always the key to success. Second, General van Uhm appointed a colonel to lead all Dutch counter-IED activities, whom he gave direct access. He was given a broad mandate and 70 million euros, a significant budget. And within a year, we were able to provide all necessary training for the troops to be deployed. We improved our tactics, techniques, and procedures. And we had the equipment better suited to face the new threat. In 2007, every other day, we encountered one IED. Thanks to all the efforts made, more than 50% of those IEDs did not reach their deadly goal. Now, how did General van Uhm manage to do this? Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I am a naval officer. I've been commanding ships and maritime units and have been in leadership positions during exercises, deployments, and operations during a large part of my career. I've led many men and women, in my case, often at sea, to accomplish the assigned missions successfully. I've taken calculated but necessary risks when the situation demanded so. And then one day, I was posted at the Ministry of Defense in The Hague. And for me, everything changed too. The contrast with the operational military environment couldn't have been greater. Managerial skills rather than command skills. Avoiding risks rather than having to take them. Consensus-based decisions rather than commands. Looking for certainty rather than being confronted with uncertainty. Planning in terms of years or more instead of days and weeks. The political ecosystem where the Ministry of Defense is part of requires our military personnel to operate and lead in an environment they are not used to, and sometimes not even good at, or suited for. But even at the Ministry of Defense, sometimes the qualities for leading in the operational environment are required again. Like on July 6th this year. Just a normal day at the Ministry. A few meetings. A video teleconferencing meeting with our permanent representative in Brussels. Then lunch. In the evening, my daughter would organize a summer barbecue for her friends, and I intended to support her, especially when you are a barbecue expert like I am. Unfortunately, that evening, I would not be able to support my daughter's barbecue as more urgent matters came up. At 1:30 in the afternoon, I received a telephone call from the Director of Joint Operations at the Defense Staff. In Mali, a terrible accident had happened during a mortar shooting exercise. 2 of our soldiers had died, and 1 was severely wounded. For the Chief of Defense, or when he is not present, for me, a very hectic period starts at such a moment. A period that includes 3 crucial steps. First, the names of the casualties must be confirmed. Second, the relatives must be told the terrible news. Third, the media, and with them the public, must be informed. 3 seemingly simple steps, yet every time they turn out not to be simple. And every time the 3 steps require strong leadership, analyzing risk, and sometimes even accepting risk. You don't want to inform the wrong relatives, so you must be sure about the casualties' names and their condition. You don't want to have the relatives find out the fate of their son or daughter via the media. And with all the social media, the media and therefore the public is informed faster than you can imagine. So when the prosecutor told me that the bodies of the casualties would have to be inspected by himself first to confirm their identity, that meant him traveling to Mali, I realized that would delay our three-step process with days, maybe even a week. I made it at that time very clear that that was unacceptable. But there was also pressure to hold the press conference at 8 o'clock because of the 8 o'clock news. But the confirmation of all the relatives being informed was not there yet. Meanwhile, at social media, very strangely via a tweet from Denmark, already messages appeared that there were Dutch casualties in Mali. And the media were starting to make telephone calls to us and even to publish those messages. Delay the press conference and the risk the relatives being informed or even misinformed through rumors, or inform the media and risk the relatives being informed through the press conference at 8 o'clock. Tough decisions. Conditions you would normally find in an operational environment. No consensus, just one man taking those decisions. No risk avoidance. So I took the decision to hold the press conference at 8 o'clock and would minimize damage when necessary. Fortunately, the last one of all the relatives was informed just minutes before the press conference. This time it worked out. Now, how did I manage to do that? Ladies and gentlemen, I told you 3 different personal stories. Stories about leadership. Stories about commanders adapting their style of leadership to ever-changing circumstances. Sometimes to crisis in various forms and shapes. Sometimes to a change in context. And sometimes to changing roles of ourselves and the players in the ecosystem we operate in. Now, how do we prepare our leaders for commanding our men and women in crises? For adapting their style of leadership to whatever the circumstances demand. For being agile when required, but still being sufficiently stable to function for decades in operations as well as in our standing organization. The answer is threefold. In the first place, we select our future leaders carefully before the start of their military career. And there a paradox can be seen at the level of the individual. Highly creative, highly innovative, and extremely change-oriented people not rarely have anarchistic or at least non-conformist tendencies. However, to be able to lead, one must also be able to accept the leadership of others. The people we need as our future leaders must be flexible. At the same time, they also need to be able to function durably in our military organization. Selecting the right students for our military schools and academy is something we therefore take very serious. Keeping that paradox in mind and handpicking our future leaders is a time-consuming yet essential job we do not take lightly. In the second place, we continue to train and coach our leaders during their whole career. As agility and adaptability are not characteristics we are born with, we have to further develop their flexibility into agility and adaptability. We train them during exercises where we simulate the circumstances of war or crisis situations. We train them during mandatory courses during each phase of their career. An example is our top defense course, a 9-week course for our future top management. Of those 9 weeks, 3 are addressing leadership and personal development. And not only through lectures, but also through training and reflecting on their leadership styles. And we train them during additional courses our leaders can apply for. We offer more than 15 different courses on various aspects of leadership for our personnel. One striking example is the course Leading the Agile Organizations for Managers, to name just one. And finally, in the third place, we detect and select our future hire cadre, our top management, later in their career. We are looking for men and women who must be very good professionals, able to be successful leaders during operations. On top of that, they need to be able to lead anywhere in our standing organization. Last but not least, they must also be successful in the more political, managerial, and unfortunately also sometimes bureaucratic environment of our ministry in The Hague. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you 3 different stories about leaders in changing environments, followed by the question, how did they manage? And I told you the 3 methods we use to select and train our leaders. In the end, when you ask Sergeant Bacchus, General van and me, what we have valued the most during those years, we will all give a similar answer. It is the build-up of experience during training and operations over many years we value the most. It is reassuring that those experiences and competencies can be used as a strong foundation when responding to a developing crisis. A crisis that will always be different than the previous one. And that is where the Netherlands Armed Forces will keep on investing in. Allowing our leaders to get the experience they need by training and exercising for those moments they need them the most during operations. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jackson and Lieutenant Colonel Lindsay wrote in 2014, "Isn't adaptive leadership just good leadership?" And that, I believe, is a good way to describe how the Netherlands Armed Forces see leadership. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this inspiring talk and the nice examples that I wrote. I found it particularly interesting how you sort of draw out that on one hand it's about the individuals and their characteristics, and on the other hand it's their skills that they need to build up in order to be good leaders, right? So just sort of when we, and also your remark that agility isn't something new really. So no, I don't think so. So if we look at agility from sports science, it says basically keep your muscles trained, right? So only if you have a muscles trained, you can be agile. So in that sense, your educational lines that prepare recruits and cadets in order to be good leaders in context is very important. So in that sense, agility on an organizational, from an organizational perspective is also about learning. So that the organization keeps on exercising and training to have the muscles trained in order to be agile. So I don't know, would you, from the experiences that we have in the field and looking at some of the bureaucracies that we also have here in The Hague, how do you think can the experiences that you have from the field help our organizations or bureaucracies to be more agile?
I think it was the last speaker who also said something about the fact that if you look at self-leading teams, it's relatively young people, and it brings stress amongst the people because they lack basically the experience. They lack the understanding of what their actions might lead to. And so the whole meaning of experience has been underestimated in my view for a very long time. And you see it in many fields where basically it is about financial control. It is much less about professionalism, and it is in education, it is in healthcare, it is in our business, it is in different areas where the professional has not been an important person for a very long time because the general manager as a skill was more important. And I believe in many jobs, being a professional, whether you are a lawyer or whether you are a financial person or whether you are a policeman or whatever, or a doctor, you need to have skills as well. It is not only about being smart and young and flexible. It is also about, understanding what the business is about. The fact that, experience is also being built by making mistakes. And having made a lot of mistakes myself, I now can help younger people as well, to explain them that making the mistake itself is not a problem, as long as, for example, safety is not in danger, or whether, it is not always about dying. It is not all in our business. Safety and making sure that people do not die unnecessary is, of course, a very important thing, because it is about life and death. But in many situations, in the more managerial areas, it is not about life and death. And we can make mistakes. But you need to have experience to actually get the time to go through that process. And I think that is something that has been underestimated for a long time, because being young and being fast and intelligent brings you to the top immediately, and then you actually bump into something which is, I don't actually know what I do here, apart from being smart and being flexible and agile and all these things we talk about.
Thank you, thank you. I think we have time, before we move into the panel discussion, time for 1-2 questions to Rob. Do we have...
how's the fun factor in your new role in The Hague?
The fun factor?
Yeah.
Actually, I have fun every day, and I'm not lying to you. And actually, I try to behave probably a little bit not in the normal bureaucratic way. I try to joke with people still. I try to make fun of myself day in, day out, which is, I think, very important for leaders, to not take yourself too serious. And again, all the things that were here on the screen by the former speakers, if you look at the mechanisms, it is everywhere the same. You try to motivate your teams, your people, not by money. I mean, I'm not in a business where you get rich. I have a very good salary, but in the military or when you are in government, it's not about getting rich. It is about people who are motivated by other things. And it is about, in my case, security and safety, and it is in other cases curing people or teaching people. So, and I think the passion that is in the armed forces is a very important reasons why I go to the office smiling every day.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing your stories with us, first of all. Secondly, I still have a question about how you facilitate teams in the field. How do you trust them? How do you empower them to make decisions? And is there a difference between 10, 20 years ago and now, in your view?
Well, the interesting thing is that when we send people to Mali, Afghanistan, Iraq, whatever, relatively young people have a huge responsibility. So they go with a team into the field, they talk to leaders in that particular area. They take decisions about spending a lot of money, making important decisions on security issues. It is very difficult for those people when they come back into the normal organization, where, you have to have the authority for everything by not only one person, but in general by too many. So to come back and have the responsibility as a young lieutenant and come back and then to have to ask everything again is a very unsatisfactory situation. But both worlds are part of the reality. We cannot run the organization in the Netherlands as we act in a mission. Because that is not the way it is accepted here in how we manage and control. And so you have to be able to be functional in both worlds if you want to be successful.